What if the person God has been preparing for you has already started speaking your name in rooms you've never entered? What if right now, while you're watching this video, someone is defending your character to people who don't even know you exist yet? There's a supernatural phenomenon happening in the spiritual realm that most believers completely miss, and it's one of the most powerful confirmations that your divine spouse is approaching. They're not just thinking about you in private. They're not just praying for you behind closed doors. Something far more significant is taking place. Your future husband or wife is identifying you publicly before they even know your face. They're claiming you in conversations. They're protecting your reputation in circles where your name hasn't been mentioned. They're establishing your honor in places you haven't arrived at yet. And if you don't understand this sign, you might walk right past the very person God has assigned to your destiny. In the next 60 seconds, I'm going to reveal exactly what this public identification looks like, why it's actually a biblical pattern that precedes every covenant marriage, and the 3 specific ways you'll know when someone is genuinely marking you as theirs in the spiritual realm before the physical manifestation ever takes place. By the end of this message, you'll understand why the person who talks about you when you're not in the room is worth far more than the person who only shows interest when you're standing right in front of them. So stay with me, because what I'm about to share might completely shift how you discern authentic divine connections from counterfeit attractions. If you're new to God's Prophecy Message channel, I want to welcome you into this sacred space where we don't just talk about relationships, we talk about covenant partnerships that carry kingdom assignments. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications, because the content we release here isn't just encouraging, it's strategically timed for the season you're in. The Holy Spirit has been directing these messages to reach you exactly when you need them most. And for those of you who have been part of this community and feel led to support the work we're doing here, you can send a super thanks right under this video or visit our Buy Me Coffee link in the description. Every act of generosity helps us continue producing these prophetic messages that are changing lives and restoring hope to women who thought their season of waiting would never end. Your support literally becomes seed that waters the faith of thousands of women walking similar journeys. Before we go any further, I want you to do something right now. If you're watching this video and you believe that God has someone specifically assigned to your life, someone who will honor you publicly and privately, someone who won't be ashamed to claim you before they even fully know you, I want you to type in the comments right now, "I receive." Don't just watch passively, participate in your own breakthrough. Your declaration of faith in the comment section isn't just engagement, it's agreement with what heaven is already orchestrating. So go ahead and type, "I receive." Now let me take you into something that most relationship teaching completely overlooks. We spend so much time talking about chemistry and compatibility, about physical attraction and shared interests, about timing and circumstances aligning. But there's a spiritual dynamic that supersedes all of those natural considerations. It's the phenomenon of public identification. And before you think this is just some modern dating concept I'm imposing on Scripture, let me show you exactly where this pattern originates. It's woven throughout the entire biblical narrative of covenant relationships, and once you see it, you'll recognize it operating in your own life. Let's go back to the book of Ruth. Here's a woman who had lost everything. Her husband was dead. Her future looked absolutely barren. She was a foreigner in a land that didn't naturally welcome her. She had every reason to believe that her story was over, that she had missed her moment, that the best years were behind her. But something was happening in the spiritual realm that Ruth couldn't yet see with her natural eyes. There was a man named Boaz who began identifying her publicly before they ever had a private conversation of substance. Listen carefully to what happens in Ruth chapter 2. When Ruth goes to glean in the fields, Boaz doesn't just notice her. He inquires about her. He asks his servants, "Whose young woman is this?" He's identifying her. He's marking her. He's distinguishing her from everyone else in that field. But here's where it gets even more significant. Boaz speaks to his workers about Ruth. He gives them specific instructions about her. He tells them to leave extra grain for her. He commands them not to touch her or rebuke her. He's establishing her honor publicly before he ever makes his intentions known to her privately. Ruth chapter 2 verse 15 says, "And when she rose up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not." This wasn't a private gesture of affection. This was a public declaration of protection. Boaz was identifying Ruth as someone under his covering before she ever understood that she was his future wife. He claimed her in public spaces before he claimed her in private commitment. Do you see the pattern? Your God-ordained spouse will begin to identify you publicly before your relationship is even established privately. They'll defend your name in rooms where you're not present. They'll speak well of you to people who influence their life. They'll position you honorably in their conversations, even when you haven't asked them to. This isn't manipulation. This isn't possessiveness. This is the supernatural preparation that happens when God is aligning two people for covenant purpose. The person who is truly from God won't keep you hidden. They won't be ashamed of you. They won't minimize your value in public while claiming to cherish you in private. No, they will establish your worth in the eyes of others, even before you've established your relationship with each other. Now, I know some of you are thinking about past situations where someone claimed you privately, but denied you publicly, where someone said they loved you behind closed doors but couldn't acknowledge you in front of people who mattered to them. Let me tell you right now, that was not God's plan for you. That was not your divine spouse. That was a test designed to teach you the difference between authentic love and counterfeit attachment. Proverbs 18 verse 22 says, "Whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing, and obtaineth favor of the Lord." Notice that word findeth. It implies public discovery, not secret hiding. When a man finds a wife, he finds something valuable, something worth announcing, something worth identifying before God and man. He doesn't conceal what he's found. He doesn't minimize its value. He presents it publicly because he recognizes the favor attached to it. The same principle applies when a woman recognizes her covenant husband. She doesn't have to hide her respect for him. She doesn't diminish his character in front of her friends to seem independent or unbothered. No, Proverbs 31 tells us that the virtuous woman's husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She builds his reputation. She identifies him publicly as a man of worth. This is the reciprocal nature of covenant relationships. Both parties establish each other's honor in public spaces because they recognize that what God has joined together carries a testimony that's meant to be witnessed. So what does this public identification actually look like in modern contexts? How will you know when someone is genuinely marking you in the spiritual realm before your relationship fully manifests in the natural? Let me give you 3 specific indicators that you need to watch for, 3 signs that someone is identifying you publicly in a way that confirms God's hand on your connection. Pay close attention because these aren't just romantic gestures. These are prophetic signals that separate divine appointments from human attractions. The first sign is advocacy in your absence. This is huge. Your future spouse will speak favorably about you when you're not around to defend yourself. They'll correct wrong narratives about your character. They'll challenge assumptions that minimize your worth. They'll insert themselves into conversations where your reputation is being discussed, and they'll set the record straight. Now, this doesn't mean they're blind to your flaws or that they misrepresent who you are. It means they understand your heart at a level that transcends surface judgments. They see the real you, the you that God sees, and they refuse to let others diminish what God is doing in and through you. Think about how Joseph responded to Mary when he discovered she was pregnant before their marriage was consummated. The natural response would have been public accusation and shame. That's what the law permitted. That's what culture expected. But Matthew chapter 1 verse 19 says, "Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not willing to make her a public example, was minded to put her away privily." Even before the angel explained the supernatural nature of Mary's pregnancy, Joseph was already protecting her reputation. He was advocating for her in his own heart, refusing to expose her to public ridicule. He was identifying her as someone worthy of honor, even when circumstances suggested otherwise. That's the kind of person God assigns to your life. Someone who protects your name when it would be easier to destroy it. Someone who advocates for your character when they could profit from assassinating it. If someone claims to be interested in you but they participate in gossip about you, if they laugh at jokes made at your expense, if they remain silent when others question your integrity, that's not your person. Your divine spouse will be the one who shuts down the negative narrative. They'll be the one who says, "Actually, I know her heart, and you've misunderstood the situation." They'll be the one who refuses to let your name be dragged through conversations meant to diminish you. This is non-negotiable. This is how you know someone is genuinely from God. They identify you correctly even when it costs them social capital to do so. The second sign of public identification is integration into their meaningful relationships. Your future spouse will naturally begin to mention you to the people who matter most in their life. Now, I'm not talking about premature introduction to family or forced meetings with friends. I'm talking about organic integration where your name comes up in their conversations because you've become part of how they process life. They talk about you to their mentor. They mention you to their prayer partner. They reference you in discussions with people who hold spiritual authority in their life. This isn't about showing you off like a trophy. This is about seeking wisdom and confirmation from trusted voices regarding what God is doing. Look at how Isaac's servant described Rebekah to Abraham's household when he returned from finding her. Genesis chapter 24 verse 66 says, "And the servant told Isaac all things that he had done." The servant didn't keep the discovery of Rebekah secret. He gave a full report. He identified her publicly to the household. He established her place before she ever arrived. By the time Rebekah reached Isaac, there were already people who knew her name, who had heard about her character, who had been prepared to receive her. That's the beauty of divine orchestration. God doesn't just connect two people privately, He prepares witnesses who can confirm what He's doing. When someone is genuinely your God-ordained spouse, they won't isolate you from their significant relationships. They won't create a separate compartment where you exist apart from the rest of their life. They'll want the people they trust to know you, to pray for you, to speak wisdom into what's developing. Now, if someone is keeping you away from everyone important in their life, if they're hesitant to let you meet anyone who knows them deeply, that's a red flag. That's not public identification. That's private concealment. And anything that has to be hidden in the dark cannot produce fruit in the light. Your divine spouse will want to bring you into the light of meaningful relationships because they're confident that what God is building will stand up under spiritual scrutiny. The third sign of public identification is future orientation in present conversations. This is a profound indicator that most people miss entirely. When someone is genuinely marking you as their future spouse in the spiritual realm, they start speaking about you in the context of tomorrow, even while you're still navigating today. They talk about future plans that naturally include you without being presumptuous. They mention goals and dreams in ways that create space for your presence. They pray about their future, and your name comes up not because they're trying to manipulate outcomes, but because their spirit recognizes that your destinies are intertwined. Look at Boaz again. When he speaks to Ruth in chapter 3, he says something incredibly significant. Ruth 3 verse 11 records Boaz saying, "And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest. For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman." Did you catch that? All the city knew. Boaz had been talking about Ruth. He had been identifying her character publicly. He had been establishing her reputation before he made his private commitment to her. By the time Boaz proposed the kinsman-redeemer arrangement, Ruth's virtue was already a matter of public record because Boaz had made it so. He spoke about her future in terms that included himself as a willing participant in her restoration. When someone is your divine spouse, they'll start to articulate a future where you belong without forcing it or fabricating it. They'll say things like, "I believe God is building something significant, and I want to understand how to honor what He's doing in your life." They'll pray for your future in ways that acknowledge their potential role in it without being manipulative. They'll speak about their own calling and naturally reference how partnership with the right person would enhance kingdom impact. This isn't game playing. This isn't premature commitment. This is spiritual recognition. It's what happens when two people who are ordained for each other begin to see the blueprint of what God has been constructing all along. Now let me pause here and address something that might be creating confusion for some of you. You might be thinking, but I've had people speak positively about me in public who turned out to be completely wrong for me. I've had people integrate me into their relationships who still weren't my spouse. I've had people talk about a future with me that never materialized. So how do I know the difference between someone who's genuinely identifying me as God's choice versus someone who's just performatively going through the motions? That's a valid question, and it requires spiritual discernment that goes beyond surface behavior. Here's the key distinction. When someone is truly identifying you publicly under the direction of the Holy Spirit, there's consistency between their public acknowledgement and their private treatment of you. The person who praises you in front of others but disrespects you when you're alone is not operating under divine direction. They're operating under demonic deception. The enemy loves to create relationships that look good publicly but are toxic privately, because that kind of contradiction destroys your ability to trust your own discernment. You start questioning whether what you experience in private is real, or if the public persona is what you should believe. That internal war is designed to keep you trapped in cycles that God never ordained. Isaiah 29 verse 15 says, "Woe unto them that seek deep to hide their counsel from the Lord, and their works are in the dark, and they say, Who seeth us, and who knoweth us?" If someone's private behavior toward you would embarrass them if it became public knowledge, that's your sign that the relationship is not from God. Your divine spouse won't have one version of themselves that they present to the world and another version that they reserve for you behind closed doors. The public identification and the private intimacy will be congruent. What they say about you to others will match what they say to you in private. How they treat you when people are watching will align with how they treat you when no one is looking. Let me also address the flip side of this truth. Some of you have been so wounded by people who praised you publicly but betrayed you privately that you've now developed a suspicion of anyone who speaks well of you in front of others. You've built walls around your heart that prevent you from receiving genuine honor when it's offered. You interpret every public acknowledgement as manipulation. You question every kind word spoken in front of witnesses. You've become so protective of your heart that you can't recognize when someone is genuinely identifying you as a person of worth. If that's you, I need you to hear me clearly. The betrayals of your past do not get to dictate the blessings of your future. Just because someone misused public affirmation to deceive you doesn't mean all public affirmation is deceptive. Psalm 147 verse 3 tells us, "He healeth the broken in heart, and bindeth up their wounds." God is healing the part of you that learned to distrust honor. He's restoring your ability to receive public identification without suspicion. He's teaching you how to discern the difference between flattery and genuine recognition. This is part of your preparation. You cannot walk into covenant marriage with walls so high that your spouse can't access your heart. Yes, you need boundaries. Yes, you need wisdom. But you cannot let past pain create present paranoia that blocks your future blessing. Your divine spouse is going to identify you publicly, and you need to be healed enough to receive it without self-sabotage. There's another dimension to this public identification that we need to explore because it's causing confusion for many women watching this video right now. What happens when the person you believe is your God-ordained spouse isn't yet at a place where they can identify you publicly? What if they recognize you in the spirit, but they're still bound by circumstances that prevent them from claiming you openly? Maybe they're still legally married, but separated. Maybe they're in a complicated situation with someone else. Maybe they're dealing with family obligations that create barriers. Maybe they're geographically distant. Maybe they're not yet spiritually mature enough to honor you the way God intends. Does that mean they're not your person? Does the absence of immediate public identification disqualify them from being divinely assigned? This is where you need prophetic wisdom and not just emotional reasoning. There's a difference between someone who is not your divine spouse and someone who is your divine spouse, but the timing isn't right yet. Remember what I shared earlier about Boaz and Ruth. The public identification was happening, but there was still a process that had to unfold. There was still a nearer kinsman who had first rights. There was still a legal procedure that had to be completed. Boaz couldn't just claim Ruth immediately, even though he recognized her as his wife in the spirit. He had to honor the protocol. He had to respect the process. He had to wait for the proper time to make his private conviction a public reality. But here's what you need to understand. During that waiting period, Boaz was still protecting Ruth. He was still providing for her. He was still establishing her honor. He was still advocating for her. The public identification was happening even though the public commitment hadn't been finalized yet. So, if you're dealing with someone who recognizes you spiritually but cannot yet claim you publicly because of legitimate circumstances beyond their immediate control, you need to watch how they treat you during the waiting period. Are they still protecting your heart? Are they still honoring your worth? Are they still making sure your needs are covered? Are they still speaking well of you to the people who know about the situation? Or are they using the complications as an excuse to disrespect you, to keep you hidden, to make you feel like you're not worthy of proper treatment until everything else is resolved? Jeremiah 29 verse 11 says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." God's plans for you include peace, not chaos. Expected ends, not eternal uncertainty. If someone claims to be your God-ordained spouse but year after year passes with no movement toward public commitment, no progress toward resolving the complications, no tangible evidence that they're working to create a situation where they can honor you properly, then you're not dealing with divine delay. You're dealing with human deception. There's a difference between waiting on God's timing and waiting on someone who's wasting your time. Your divine spouse might not be able to identify you publicly today, but they're actively working toward a tomorrow when they can. They're resolving complications. They're seeking counsel. They're making hard decisions. They're positioning themselves to be able to honor you properly. They're not content with the status quo. They're not comfortable with the hiding. They're not asking you to remain indefinitely in a situation where you can't be celebrated openly. If someone expects you to accept permanent invisibility in their life, they are not your covenant spouse, no matter how much chemistry you feel or how many spiritual confirmations you think you've received. Chemistry without commitment is not covenant. Confirmation without character is not divine. Let me take you into something that's going to provoke some of you, but it needs to be said because too many women are settling for private affection while being denied public acknowledgement. If a man really loves you, he will claim you. If a man truly recognizes you as his wife, he will identify you publicly at the earliest appropriate opportunity. He won't be ashamed of you. He won't minimize the relationship. He won't introduce you as just a friend when you're clearly more than that. He won't hide you from his family for years. He won't keep you away from his social circles indefinitely. He won't make excuses about why the timing isn't right to let people know you're together. A real man, a godly man, a man who is genuinely your divine spouse, will be proud to let the world know that you're his. Now, I understand there are seasons where discretion is wisdom. I understand there are situations where public announcement would be premature. But there's a vast difference between being discreet during a transitional season and being hidden as a permanent status. If you've been with someone for years and nobody significant in their life knows about you, if you've been in relationship with someone and they still haven't introduced you to their family, if you've been intimate with someone emotionally and spiritually, but they can't seem to acknowledge you publicly, that's not God's design for you. That's a counterfeit connection that's keeping you from the authentic covenant God has prepared. 1 Corinthians 13 verse 4 through 7 describes love's characteristics. It says love does not behave itself unseemly. It's not puffed up. It does not seek its own. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Real love doesn't ask you to bear the burden of invisibility. Real love doesn't require you to endure permanent uncertainty. Real love doesn't seek its own comfort at the expense of your honor. If someone loves you according to God's definition of love, they will publicly identify you in ways that protect your dignity, establish your worth, and honor your sacrifice. So let me give you some practical ways to recognize when public identification is moving in the right direction versus when you're being strung along by someone who has no real intention of honoring you properly. First, watch how they respond when other people ask about their relationship status. Do they become defensive? Do they change the subject? Do they give vague non-answers? Or do they respectfully acknowledge that there's someone significant in their life, even if they're not ready to give full details? You can be appropriately private without being dishonestly evasive. If someone acts like you don't exist when certain people ask about their personal life, that's not protection, that's rejection. Second, notice whether they're actively working to resolve any complications that prevent them from fully committing to you publicly. If someone says they can't be with you openly because of financial issues, are they working on their finances? If they say they can't commit because of unresolved matters from a previous relationship, are they getting legal counsel and taking steps toward resolution? If they claim family obligations are preventing them from moving forward, are they having honest conversations with their family about their future? Or are they just using these explanations as permanent excuses while expecting you to wait indefinitely without any evidence of progress? Progress is proof. Movement is evidence. If nothing is changing month after month, year after year, then you're not waiting on God's timing. You're enabling someone's indecision. Third, pay attention to how they speak about you to the few people who do know about your connection. When they talk about you to their close friends or family members who are aware of the relationship, what words do they use? Do they speak about you with honor and respect? Do they talk about you as someone valuable who they're blessed to know? Or do they minimize the relationship, make jokes at your expense, or talk about you in ways that diminish your worth? The way someone speaks about you to others is a direct reflection of how they value you in their heart. Proverbs 4 verse 23 says, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." What's in the heart will eventually come out of the mouth. If someone's heart truly honors you, their mouth will identify you honorably even in private conversations. Now let's talk about what you should do. If you recognize that someone is beginning to identify you publicly, but you're not sure if they're genuinely your God-ordained spouse, or if this is just another person who's going to end up wasting your time. How do you steward this season wisely without either prematurely shutting down what God might be doing or naively opening yourself up to someone who's not truly from Him? This requires a delicate balance of faith and wisdom, of remaining open while also remaining guarded, of participating in what God is orchestrating while not running ahead of His timing. First, continue to anchor yourself in prayer and don't let anyone's public identification of you become a substitute for God's private confirmation to you. Just because someone is speaking well of you doesn't mean they're your spouse. Just because someone is integrating you into their relationships doesn't automatically mean God sent them. Just because someone is talking about a future with you doesn't guarantee they're part of your destiny. You still need to hear from God for yourself. You still need confirmation in your own spirit. You still need peace in your own heart. Don't let public attention override private discernment. Proverbs 3 verses 5 and 6 say, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." Notice it says, trust in the Lord, not trust in the person who's showing you attention. Acknowledge him, not acknowledge your feelings. Direct thy paths, meaning God will make it clear if you stay connected to him. Some of you have stopped praying about a relationship because the public identification felt so good that you assumed it must be God. That's dangerous. That's how you end up in covenant with the wrong person. Never stop seeking God's face just because someone is showing you favor. Let God confirm what people are declaring. Second, Observe character over time and don't make permanent decisions based on temporary behavior. Anyone can be on their best behavior for a season. Anyone can speak well of you for a few months. Anyone can integrate you into their life during the honeymoon phase. But what happens when challenges arise? What happens when life gets difficult? What happens when you're no longer new and exciting? Does the public identification continue, or does it fade? Does the advocacy in your absence remain consistent, or does it disappear when it's no longer convenient? Do they still protect your name when you've disappointed them, or do they throw you under the bus the moment you make a mistake? The person God has for you will identify you publicly, not just when you're at your best, but also when you're at your worst. They'll advocate for you not just when you've impressed them, but also when you've let them down. They'll speak well of you not just when you're meeting their needs, but also when you're going through your own struggles and can't give them what they want. That's covenant love. That's divine assignment. That's the difference between someone who's genuinely from God and someone who's just playing a role until something better comes along. Matthew 7 verse 16 says, "Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles?" You discern the authenticity of someone's public identification by looking at the fruit it produces. Does their acknowledgement of you lead to greater peace in your life or greater confusion? Does their advocacy for you result in increased honor or increased drama? Does their talk about your future together create clarity or chaos? Does their integration of you into their relationships strengthen your sense of security or heighten your anxiety? The fruit will tell you everything you need to know about the root. If the fruit is peace, clarity, honor, and increased faith, that's evidence of God's hand. If the fruit is confusion, anxiety, drama, and decreased peace, that's evidence of fleshly attachment or demonic interference. Third, maintain your own identity and don't lose yourself in someone else's public identification of you. This is so important, and it's where many women make a critical mistake. When someone starts speaking well of you, when they start integrating you into their life, when they start talking about a future with you, it's easy to start defining yourself by their perception of you. You start performing to maintain their approval. You start adjusting who you are to fit their narrative. You start sacrificing parts of yourself to keep their public identification going. That's not God's plan for you. Your divine spouse will identify who you really are, not who you pretend to be to keep their attention. Ephesians 2 verse 10 says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath before ordained, that we should walk in them." You are God's workmanship. Your identity is rooted in Christ, not in any person's opinion of you. Yes, your spouse should honor you. Yes, they should speak well of you. Yes, they should identify you publicly with respect and admiration, but you should never twist yourself into a pretzel trying to earn or maintain that identification. If someone's public acknowledgement is contingent on you being something you're not, then they're not identifying you. They're identifying an image of you that they've created in their mind. And eventually, when the real you emerges, that false identification will crumble. Let me also give you a warning about something that Satan is using to deceive many women right now. The enemy knows that public identification is a sign of covenant relationships, so he's creating counterfeit versions of it to trap you in situations that look like divine appointments, but are actually demonic distractions. One of his favorite tactics is to send someone who identifies you publicly on social media, but treats you poorly in person. They post pictures of you. They write captions praising you. They make it look like you're together and happy. But behind the scenes, they're emotionally abusive, financially manipulative, sexually immoral, or spiritually controlling. They use the public image as a way to trap you because now you feel obligated to maintain what everyone else sees, even though what you're living privately is destroying you. Let me be very clear. Public identification on social media is not the same as genuine covenant honor. Posting someone on Instagram is not equivalent to protecting them in real life. Anyone can curate an online image. Anyone can create a facade of a perfect relationship for public consumption. What matters is what's happening when the cameras are off, when the posts are done, when it's just the two of you and nobody's watching. If someone's social media presence doesn't match their private treatment of you, that's not public identification, that's public performance. And God is not impressed by performances. He's looking for authentic covenant that functions in private the same way it presents in public. 2 Corinthians 5 verse 12 says, "For we commend not ourselves again unto you, but give you occasion to glory on our behalf, that ye may have somewhat to answer them, which glory in appearance, and not in heart." Some people glory in appearance. They care about how things look, but not about how things actually are. Your divine spouse will glory in heart. They'll care more about your private reality than your public image. They'll be more concerned with how they're treating you behind closed doors than how they're portraying you on social media. If someone's investment in your public image exceeds their investment in your private well-being, they're not from God. They're from a spirit of pride and pretense. Let me give you one more warning about a counterfeit version of public identification that's trapping many women. Some of you are with men who identify you publicly to certain people but hide you from others. They'll talk about you to their friends but not their family. They'll acknowledge you around people who don't matter, but not around people who do. They'll be open about the relationship in certain contexts, but secretive in others. This selective identification is not a sign of covenant, it's a sign of compartmentalization. And when someone compartmentalizes their life, keeping you in certain boxes but not allowing you access to others, that's evidence that they're not fully committed to you. They're managing perceptions instead of living in truth. Your divine spouse won't categorize their life in a way that excludes you from significant areas. Yes, there are appropriate boundaries. Yes, there are professional contexts where personal relationships aren't discussed. But if someone claims to be in covenant with you, while simultaneously keeping whole sections of their life off limits to you, something is wrong. If they talk about you at work but won't introduce you to their mother, that's a problem. If they mention you to casual acquaintances but won't let you meet their pastor, that's a red flag. If they're comfortable telling strangers about you but nervous about you encountering people from their past, you need to ask yourself what they're hiding and why. John 3 verse 20 says, "For everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved." People who are operating in integrity invite light into every area of their life. People who are hiding something keep certain areas in darkness. If someone is keeping you away from certain people or certain situations, it's usually because they know those people or situations would expose something they don't want you to see. That's not public identification. That's strategic concealment. And you deserve better than a relationship that requires you to remain partially hidden while being partially acknowledged. Now let's shift our focus to what you should be doing during this season while you're waiting for your God-ordained spouse to identify you publicly. Because this season of waiting is not just about passively hoping someone notices you. This is your season of preparation. This is when God is developing in you the character that will sustain covenant marriage. This is when you're learning to identify yourself correctly, so that when your spouse begins to identify you publicly, you're ready to receive it without insecurity, without suspicion, without self-sabotage. How you steward this waiting season will determine how well you steward the marriage season. First, you need to identify yourself the way God identifies you. Stop waiting for a man to tell you you're valuable. Stop waiting for someone to publicly acknowledge you before you believe you're worth acknowledging. Stop making your worth contingent on whether someone is claiming you or not. God has already identified you. He's already called you chosen. He's already named you worthy. He's already established your value through the blood of Jesus Christ. Romans 8 verse 16 says, "The Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit, that we are the children of God." You are a child of God. That's your primary identity. That's your public identification. That's what matters most. When you truly understand who you are in Christ, you won't be desperate for human validation. You won't settle for relationships where you're hidden. You won't accept treatment that diminishes your God-given worth. You'll require that anyone who wants access to your life honors the identity God has already established. You won't be trying to convince someone to see your value. You'll be discerning whether they have the spiritual eyes to recognize what God has already declared. This shift in perspective changes everything. You stop auditioning for love and start evaluating whether someone is qualified to steward what God has entrusted to them in you. Second, practice identifying others correctly. One of the reasons many women struggle to recognize their God-ordained spouse is because they've never developed discernment about people's character. They're attracted to surface qualities. They're impressed by external accomplishments. They're drawn to charisma and confidence, but they don't know how to identify a person's heart. They don't know how to recognize authentic godliness versus religious performance. They don't know the difference between someone who talks about God and someone who walks with God. So they end up giving their heart to people who were never qualified to carry it. Proverbs 4 verse 7 says, "Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding." Notice it doesn't say get a man, it says get wisdom. Get understanding. Develop the ability to perceive what's really happening beneath the surface. Learn to identify people accurately. Stop giving people credit for potential and start holding them accountable for pattern. Stop being impressed by what someone says they're going to do and start observing what they consistently demonstrate. Stop making excuses for character flaws that keep showing up. When you develop the ability to identify people correctly, you'll stop wasting years on men who were never your divine spouse. Third, position yourself in places where your God-ordained spouse can find you. Now, this doesn't mean you need to go to every church event or join every singles ministry or download every dating app. This means you need to be faithful to your assignment. You need to be walking in your purpose. You need to be pursuing the calling God has placed on your life. Because your divine spouse isn't just looking for a woman who's physically attractive or emotionally available. They're looking for a woman who's spiritually aligned. They're looking for someone whose assignment complements their assignment. They're looking for someone whose calling enhances their calling. When you're faithful to your God-given purpose, you position yourself in the path of the person God has assigned to you. Think about how Rebecca met Isaac's servant. She was faithfully serving, drawing water for travelers. She wasn't at a singles event. She wasn't trying to make herself noticed. She was simply being obedient to the work in front of her. And in the process of being faithful to her assignment, she encountered her divine appointment. The same principle applies to you. When you're faithful to what God has called you to do, He orchestrates encounters with the person He's called you to marry. You don't have to chase. You don't have to manipulate. You just have to be faithful. Galatians 6 verse 9 reminds us, "And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap, if we faint not." Don't grow weary in doing what God has assigned to you. Don't faint in your purpose because marriage hasn't manifested yet. Keep serving, keep giving, keep growing, keep pursuing excellence in your calling. Because in due season, in God's appointed time, you will reap the harvest of your faithfulness. And part of that harvest is the spouse who recognizes your faithfulness and identifies you publicly as someone worth honoring. If you've stayed with me this far, I want you to do something. Go ahead and hit that like button on this video, because what we're discussing here is transforming how you see relationships and recognize covenant. And drop a comment right now that says, "Blessed and ready." Declare that you're blessed to be chosen by God and ready to receive everything He's prepared for you, including the spouse who will identify you publicly with honor. Your declaration activates your faith, and it encourages other women walking this same journey. Now let me address one more critical aspect of public identification that many women are confused about. What happens when the person you believe is your God-ordained spouse is identifying you publicly, but you're not sure you're ready for what that identification implies? What if they're moving toward covenant commitment, but you're still healing from past wounds? What if they're ready to claim you openly, but you're still dealing with insecurity? What if they're prepared to establish your honor publicly, but you haven't yet learned to honor yourself? This is a real scenario for many women, and it requires honest self-examination. Sometimes the delay in your covenant manifestation is not about the other person, it's about you. God has been preparing your spouse to recognize you, to advocate for you, to identify you publicly with honor. But you haven't been preparing yourself to receive what they're offering. You're still operating from a wounded place. You're still responding from trauma rather than from truth. You're still testing them with behavior that pushes them away, even though you want them to stay. You're still sabotaging what God is building because deep down you don't believe you're worthy of the honor they're trying to give you. If this is you, I need you to hear me with compassion but also with clarity. You cannot receive covenant love if you haven't healed from covenant betrayal. You cannot steward public honor if you're still living in private shame. You cannot accept someone identifying you correctly if you're still identifying yourself incorrectly. This is why the preparation season is so important. God is not just preparing your spouse, He's preparing you. He's healing your wounds. He's renewing your mind. He's restoring your confidence. He's teaching you how to receive love without suspicion, without sabotage, without self-destruction. Psalm 147 verse 3 promises, He healeth the broken in heart and bindeth up their wounds. Let God heal your broken heart before you try to give it to someone else. Let Him bind up your wounds before you enter into covenant commitment. Because if you're not healed, you'll wound the person God sends to love you. You'll project past betrayals onto present blessings. You'll punish your future spouse for what past partners did to you. And that's not fair to them. That's not fair to you. That's not fair to what God is trying to build through your union. Some of you need to take responsibility for the fact that your covenant has been delayed because you haven't been ready for it. Yes, God has been working on the other person's timing, but He's also been working on your readiness. Stop blaming the weight entirely on circumstances beyond your control and start asking God what He's trying to develop in you during this season. What character is He trying to build? What insecurity is He trying to heal? What pattern is He trying to break? What truth is He trying to establish? Your willingness to cooperate with what God is doing in you will accelerate what God is trying to do through you. Let me give you some questions to ask yourself if you're wondering whether you're truly ready to receive the public identification your spouse is offering. First, can you accept compliments without deflecting them? When someone speaks well of you, do you immediately minimize it, or do you receive it graciously? If you can't accept kind words, you're not ready for public identification. Your spouse is going to speak well of you, and if you're constantly contradicting them or diminishing what they're saying, you'll undermine the honor they're trying to establish. Learn to say thank you when someone compliments you. Practice receiving affirmation without feeling like you have to prove you're humble by rejecting it. Second, can you be vulnerable without being chaotic? There's a difference between appropriate vulnerability and emotional dumping. Vulnerability is when you share your heart with wisdom and timing, trusting someone with your truth in a way that invites deeper connection. Chaos is when you unleash every unprocessed emotion on someone whenever you feel like it, making them responsible for managing your internal turmoil. If you're still in a place where every conversation becomes an emotional crisis, you're not ready for covenant. Your spouse should be a safe place for your heart, not a dumping ground for your dysfunction. Get counseling, get deliverance, get the healing you need so that when your spouse identifies you publicly, you're not embarrassing them with private instability. Third, can you celebrate others without feeling threatened by their blessings? One of the signs that you're ready for your own covenant is that you can genuinely celebrate when other people get theirs. If you're bitter every time someone gets engaged, if you're resentful when you see happy couples, if you're cynical about other people's testimonies, you're not in a place to receive your own. Bitterness blocks blessings. Jealousy stops miracles. Proverbs 14 verse 30 says, "A sound heart is the life of the flesh, but envy the rottenness of the bones." Get your heart sound. Learn to rejoice with those who rejoice, even when you're still waiting for your own reason to rejoice. That's maturity, that's readiness, that's the posture that positions you for breakthrough. Fourth, can you be alone without being desperate? If you can't function unless you're in a relationship, you're not ready for marriage. If you need constant validation from someone to feel okay about yourself, you're not prepared for covenant. Marriage is not designed to complete you. Marriage is designed to complement you. You need to be whole before you join your life with someone else. You need to be content in God before you seek companionship with a spouse. 2 Corinthians 3 verse 5 says, "Not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think anything as of ourselves, but our sufficiency is of God." Your sufficiency comes from God, not from a man. When you know that, when you've experienced that, when you've lived that, then you're ready to receive the spouse God sends. Let me tell you something that's going to shift your perspective on this whole conversation about public identification. The ultimate public identification has already occurred. God identified you publicly when He sent Jesus Christ to die for you. He claimed you before the entire spiritual realm. He advocated for you when you had no defense. He established your worth when you had nothing to offer. He spoke your name in the courts of heaven and declared you worthy of redemption. That's the most significant public identification you'll ever receive. And when you truly understand that, when that truth settles deep in your spirit, you'll stop being desperate for human acknowledgement. Romans 5 verse 8 says, "But God commendeth His love toward us in that, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us." God didn't wait until you cleaned yourself up to identify you as someone worth saving. He didn't wait until you proved your value to claim you as His own. He identified you publicly while you were still in sin. He advocated for you while you were still His enemy. He established your honor while you were still dishonorable. That's covenant love. That's divine identification. And when you receive that, when you let that transform how you see yourself, you'll require that any human relationship reflects the same unconditional commitment. So here's what I want you to take away from this entire message. Your God-ordained spouse will identify you publicly before your covenant is finalized. They'll advocate for you in your absence. They'll integrate you into their meaningful relationships. They'll speak about you with future orientation, but that public identification must be consistent with their private treatment of you. If there's a disconnect between how they present you publicly and how they treat you privately, something is wrong. If they're honoring you in front of others but dishonoring you behind closed doors, they're not your divine spouse. They're a counterfeit connection that God is allowing you to experience so you can learn discernment. Don't settle for someone who praises you in public but abuses you in private. Don't accept someone who claims you around people who don't matter but hides you from people who do. Don't tolerate someone who talks about a future with you but never takes concrete steps to build that future. And don't lose yourself trying to maintain someone's public identification if that identification requires you to deny who you really are. Your divine spouse will identify the authentic you, not a performance version of you. They'll honor the real you, not an image you've created to keep their attention. While you're waiting for your covenant spouse to find you and identify you publicly, do the work of identifying yourself correctly. Know who you are in Christ. Understand your value in God's economy. Develop the discernment to recognize authentic love versus counterfeit attachment. Position yourself in your purpose so your spouse can find you where God planted you, and heal from past wounds so you're ready to receive the honor your spouse will offer when they arrive. The wait is not wasted if you're using it to become the person who can steward what's coming. Before we close, I want to pray for you. Father, I thank you for every woman watching this video who has been waiting for the spouse you've promised. I thank you that you have not forgotten them. I thank you that even now, you're preparing someone to identify them publicly with honor, to advocate for them in their absence, to establish their worth before others, to claim them without shame. Lord, I pray for healing from past betrayals. I pray for deliverance from insecurity and fear. I pray for discernment to recognize authentic divine connections and wisdom to reject counterfeit relationships. I pray that these women would know their identity in you so firmly that they would never again settle for being hidden or minimized or dishonored. I declare that what you have ordained will come to pass at the appointed time. In Jesus' Name, Amen. If this message has spoken to you, if it's given you clarity about what to look for and what to avoid, I want you to do a few things right now. First, hit that like button so this video can reach other women who need this word. Second, subscribe to God's Prophecy Message channel if you haven't already, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss future messages that are specifically timed for your season. Third, share this video with someone who's been struggling to understand why they keep attracting people who won't claim them publicly. They need to hear this. And fourth, leave a comment right now that says, "Blessed and ready." Declare your faith. Activate your expectation. Agree with what heaven is already orchestrating on your behalf. For those of you who feel led to support the work we're doing here on this channel, you can send a super thanks right below this video or visit our Buy Me Coffee link in the description. Your generosity helps us continue producing these prophetic messages that are literally changing lives and restoring hope to thousands of women. Every seed you sow into this ministry comes back to you multiplied in the very areas where you've been believing for breakthrough. The person God has for you is going to identify you publicly. They're going to speak your name with honor. They're going to advocate for your character when you're not in the room. They're going to integrate you into their most meaningful relationships. They're going to talk about a future that naturally includes you. And you're going to know without question that this is the person God assigned to your destiny. Don't settle for anything less. Don't accept partial acknowledgement. Don't tolerate selective identification. Require that whoever wants covenant access to your life demonstrates covenant honor in both public and private spaces. You deserve nothing less than what God designed for you from the beginning. Stay faithful. Stay focused. Stay expectant. Your season of public identification is approaching. Shalom.